Hello, welcome to the OTB channel. Well, this is slightly different to what I'd intended a few hours ago. I woke up this morning with every intention of doing a review of a distro that I've been playing with. And I sat down and had a cup of coffee and was coming round, and I caught a video by Distrotube entitled "Are Richard Stallman and Linus Torvalds Good for Linux?" Now, the video has no commentary whatsoever. It simply consists of video clips of RMS, Richard Stallman, and Linus in particular situations where they have been interacting with members of the public, press or community. And the videos paint both of them in a dreadful light. Now, DT's been quite clever here because he's made no commentary whatsoever. He's put the videos up very much with the implication of, hey, make your mind up. And he's posed the question, are these guys good for Linux? And from the videos he's put up, his opinion would appear to be a very resounding no. So I thought long and hard about this. Do I join in this debate? Because there's a few others come up since, which I'll talk about in a second. And it's always difficult if you're going to talk about the founding fathers of something, in this case Linux. We've got RMS, who was the founder of the GNU compiler and many of the tools that we use and are embedded in Linux. And we have Linus Torvalds, the inventor of the Linux kernel. Both of these people are undoubtedly geniuses as far as their engineering ability is concerned. No doubts whatsoever. Are they good for Linux? Well, in terms of their engineering know-how, certainly. In public situations, in terms of promoting Linux, absolutely not. Now, I was a little bit worried about doing this video, simply because it's always tricky when you're talking about heroes or people that many people regard as heroes, because this type of video will always get its haters. So I actually got my wife down and I said, watch this, and I showed her DT's video. And I'm going to talk a little bit about her comments. A non-computer geek, a non-techie, absolutely no idea who Linus Torvalds or RMS are. And I think her comments are quite enlightening. But before we go on and talk a little bit about what my wife's thoughts were, let's just look at the videos themselves. So it started with Distrotube, and he posted a number of clips. I think the ones of RMS were the most extreme. We saw him taking offence at being called the founder of open source software. We saw him losing it altogether at a conference which was whether or not he should have delivered it in Spanish or English. And worst of all, we saw him being interviewed, taking his sock off, picking his feet and appearing to eat the dead skin. That's an image that will remain with me for a long time. Linus Torvalds came out a little bit better, but we saw a couple of examples of where he's not exactly politically correct in terms of some of the views that he's expressed, especially in terms of NVIDIA. Now, RMS was undoubtedly the shock portion of this. My wife watched this and she laughed at Linus and said, okay, well, who's rolled him out in front of the cameras? He should know better than to express those sort of views in public. But nevertheless, I can see he's just not very politically correct, and he is what he is. I wasn't shocked by that. When she saw the video of RMS, however, her first comment was, what a thoroughly unlikable individual. Why on earth would anybody want to go and see someone like that? He obviously has no control or sense of how he should behave in public. And I had to agree. Anyway, I will talk a little bit more about how she expanded on those comments when I explained who RMS and who Linus Torvalds were. Once that video had finished, I saw that Chris Titus had also released a response to DT, and he took the view, he did comment on this, that these guys are, you know, engineering geniuses, much as I think. However, don't wheel them out in public. They are not public speakers. That is not what they know how to do. We can't deny the contribution they've made, but hey, in the modern world, don't take them in front of the camera. From there, I noticed another response from Dark1, which was more emotional in its delivery, which talked a fair bit about we can't be hero worshipping everyone because of their achievements in the past. They have very little to do with where Linux is today, and we certainly shouldn't be deifying them. I hope I've got that right, but I'm, I suppose, paraphrasing the way that I took his video. So, okay, it was an interesting debate, and I think it's one that's likely to get quite a diametrically opposed response. Some people will agree that actually Linus and RMS should be kept out of the public eye and allowed to do what they do, and others will say absolutely not. These are our founding fathers. We've got to respect everything that they do. So, what do I think? I have a great deal of respect for both of them. Have they got relevance as far as Linux is concerned today? Well, yes, in terms of its technical content, but actually in terms of the Linux desktop, which I'm primarily concerned with, it's our communities, our developers, and at the end of the day, those companies out there who have supported continuing development of Linux, that have made the modern Linux desktop what it is today. I also have a few issues with RMS in particular, in terms of his concepts of free software as opposed to open source software, and his absolute moral belief in the four freedoms. By all means, go and look them up. I'm not going to repeat them here. My issue with any sort of moral stance is that it tends to be always quite extreme. You put out a particular moral view of how you think the world should work, and the implication of that is that everybody who disagrees with you is absolutely wrong. The result of that is rarely positive. It's normally conflict. You only have to look wider than the Linux community to see where there are diametrically opposed views, and you've got conflict inevitably. A good example is what's going on in the UK at the moment with Brexit, where you've got the country essentially divided between Brexiteers and Remainers. As a result, there's very little meaningful dialogue going on. This is where diametrically opposed views struggle. We live in a world now where it isn't a straightforward case of one view is right and one view is wrong. There's always a middle ground, and the middle ground is generally where we need to be if we're to make progress, or at least that's my view. I also, despite RMS's views about freedom, believe that in some cases he restricts my freedom. Let me explain. We have this whole debate going on about should we call our operating system, our desktop, Linux or GNU Linux, GNU/Linux. Well, my view is this. Yes, RMS was the first to develop the GNU compiler and the various programs and subsystems around it. Linus developed the kernel later, and that was what eventually made the operating system that we use. I suppose you could call it GNU/Linux to give some sort of contribution to the work that RMS did. I'm not ever going to call it GNU/Linux because it doesn't just roll off the tongue. I will always call it Linux. Not because I don't recognise the contribution of RMS, but simply because GNU/Linux is an unwieldy mouthful. And to tell me that I have to do something, that I should be calling it GNU/Linux, immediately gets my hackles up. I'm really not going to do anything I'm told that I should be doing, simply because I don't like the way I'm being told to do it. I call it Linux, and that's all I'm ever going to call it. I spent a little bit of time explaining who'd done what as far as RMS and Linus was concerned to my wife. And she said, so let me get this right. She said, so RMS there, he started the whole ball rolling with this GNU thing, but he didn't get to the kernel. And the kernel, you're telling me, is what was needed to make it into an operating system so it booted, etc., etc. And I said, yeah, a bit more complicated, but yes, essentially that's it. So she had a term, which I'm going to attribute to her, not to me, but which made me laugh a little bit. She said, so RMS was basically half a job Bob, and Linus came in and filled the gap, and so he got all the glory. And I laughed and I thought, RMS is half a job Bob? I don't think I'm describing him like that, but essentially, yeah, Linus did get the glory. And she just said, well, that's the way, the world works, isn't it? Simple. I then explained all about GNU Linux, GNU is not Unix, and how these acronyms are all over Linux at the moment, Wine is not an emulator, and the graphical image manipulation program, etc., GIMP. And she said, what stupid names. She said, you can tell they've been developed by a group of boys who thought it was very funny. They clearly never wanted these things to become popular, because if I said I'm going to install the GIMP, I'd feel stupid mentioning that to anyone. And I asked her, what does the GIMP make you think of? And she says, was it Pulp Fiction? That horrible character in the rubber? Said it all to me, that. We really are not doing ourselves any favours, guys. I understand why they might have been quite humorous to put these acronyms together, but in terms of marketing and promoting Linux, they don't really do us any favours at all. And I suppose RMS and Linus are the same. They had a great contribution. They are the founding fathers of our operating system. But they're very set in their ways. As I say, Linus came out better from these videos, and I don't mind people not being particularly politically correct. But at the end of the day, there's been lots of examples where he said things that would have hurt people's feelings for no need, no reason whatsoever. These are geeks. Yes, they may well be on the autistic spectrum. Many people are. I personally know a lot about that. I have two of my sons who are on the autistic spectrum. It doesn't mean that you have to behave badly, though. And both of them, in their own way, I think, behave badly. And whilst we may respect what technically they have been able to achieve, I think their behaviour is appalling, and it's hard to get away from that. So that's all I really wanted to say. I thought I'd make a quick contribution. My answer to DT is ultimately no. I don't think they necessarily are good for Linux in terms of Linux adoption and increasing the popularity of the Linux desktop. Were they good for Linux in terms of their engineering ability? Absolutely yes, but for God's sake, keep them out of the public eye. That's it for today, guys. I shall wait to see how many of those I get for this. Cheers. Well, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please like and subscribe. It really helps. And stay well until next time.